Anybody want to jump in? You
know what,
I'm going to finish. It's getting late, I have to drive home. Eric, on the Dan York show, you talked about forming a group to fight the Rhode Island government corruption. You gave and painted with a very broad brush your views about it. No doubt there were plenty of cases to look at in Rhode Island, and I think it's a good idea. However, I have not to this point heard the President Attorney General talk about forming a gang squad at the AG level. Now, I know we had talked earlier in the meeting, and I know the Providence Police Department, the feds, do have a little organization that is working. But I see it spreading out of the cities now into the smaller communities. If you could get money into your budget, if you are willing to form a group to look at corruption in government, would you pledge to get a small group of people to work as a gang unit for the state of Rhode Island?
Thank you, Roberto. It's a good question. And as many of you know...
Bobby, please. That is my lead, only in the papers.
All right, Bobby. Very good. And of course, as many, I'm sure you recognize that the Attorney General is really the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Rhode Island. And that's really the heart and soul of what the Attorney General's office does. Public corruption is an important aspect in my position, is how I view the priorities of that office. But there is the crime, and I know what that crime is because I've been a prosecutor in the trenches, and I've seen what happens in terms of the violence that is waging on the streets of Providence, of Pawtucket, Woonsocket, moving into Cranston, and it is moving to a community near you. I would, in fact, and it doesn't necessarily require more money. The Attorney General's budget hovers around $25 million. And the last thing that we need is someone who's going to go in and to continue to go to the legislature and go to the taxpayers and say, oh, I'm going to form this, I need more money. I'm going to form that, I need more money. What it is about ranking what the priorities are in the office. There's a tremendous talent pool in that office currently. There are prosecutors who are career prosecutors. These people have been there, they know, they have the relationships with the police officers. So there's a talent pool that you can utilize. It's about how you utilize that. And as Attorney General, I absolutely would consider putting together a task force to work alongside a group that's already in play in Providence. Currently, there's a gang task force that is housed in the Providence Police Department. It involves participation by the FBI. It also has the state police involved. And they do a good job. If you've ever been in there or get the opportunity to see it, they have all of the gang members' photos up on the wall. And it's a tremendous number of photos. It's scary because we have people in gangs that are as young as 13. And the horrors of how these kids get involved in the gangs is even more frightening. They have a process called a jump-in in which young teens have to go through a gauntlet of other gang members while they are beaten by each gang member just to get in. They have a beat out, essentially a jump out, where the same thing occurs. Female gang members are subjected to things called a sex-in, where they have multiple sex with different partners from the gangs. I mean, this is the horror that's facing the young people in our urban areas. And they're there, they go to the gangs because they're looking for some way to participate, they're looking for a place to find a sense of group, a sense of who they are, and we have to work at two different levels. One is locking them up, and I have no problem putting them behind bars, and if it requires more space, then we're going to have to just get it, because I'm going to do it as Attorney General. But we also have to make sure that we're addressing the bigger picture, and that is providing these young people an opportunity to do something else in these after-zone projects that we saw in the paper where they have groups that they can go to and participate, whether that's learning how to be a DJ or learning a skill or learning a musical instrument. But this has to be a cohesive effort. And I believe that we need to provide the resources that Providence and the FBI and the state police bring to our outlying communities. Because as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, which I've had in office, I no longer have it, but I've seen the tags in Newport, the gang tags, and it is. When you see the signs of a gang, it's on a wall. It's on a wall, and that is the recipe. That is where the violence is going to be next. I see them in Newport. We see it in Westerly. We're going to see it in and from this corridor because they're involved in the drug trade. They're involved in the gun trade. It is a real, clear, and present danger to the safety and well-being of every Rhode Islander in this state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one more quick question for Mark, and then I'm out of here. Okay?
Okay.
Whoa.
We got a question.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I guess for Eric, I can stay up.
Sure, all right.
Because you were talking about gangs and drugs, I would like to know, constitutionally speaking, these are all individual issues of morality, issues of people who have addictions. I think that it's very similar to prohibition and alcohol. Drugs are illegal. It creates a black market. People make money from drugs because it's illegal. This is the same thing that happened and went on during prohibition with alcohol. And constitutionally speaking, what right does anyone have to tell another person what they can do with their own body? And if drugs were legalized, at least let's start with marijuana, which is relatively certainly any more harmful than alcohol. We could save a lot of money not locking people up because they have an addiction problem and spending our time locking them up, and instead we could be locking up real criminals. There would be no more black market for drugs. We could regulate it like we do alcohol. It would probably be harder for minors to get it than it is while it's illegal. And that probably could go with a lot of other issues, but I'm going to kind of stay with that and ask you what you think about that.
Okay. There were several questions in that one question you presented. And so let me say this, as for the legalization of drugs, I'm against it. I'm absolutely against it. And I will explain to you why. I have seen firsthand what drugs do to individuals. And many people in this room probably have had a similar experience, either because of a family member who's been addicted, or because they work in an emergency room or a hospital, or they work at the prison. I have seen what heroin does to people with hepatitis infections, that it drives them to commit crimes to buy it. Whether it's legal or illegal, it's going to cost. And people who are addicted to drugs are going to commit crimes in order to get those drugs. Now, on the marijuana issue, in Rhode Island, we have obviously been moving very slowly but surely towards a legalization of marijuana. I do not support it. I do not support it. We should not be presenting more and more opportunities to our young people to get drawn into drugs and drug use. Marijuana is a drug. I realize the argument is that alcohol is a drug, but when you say that kids are not going to get access to it, or are going to have as hard a time as they do alcohol, let me simply say this. All you have to do is go down to the Washington County Courthouse in Wakefield and watch the young people who are in that community lining up for their having been arrested for possessing alcohol under the age of 21. Sometimes you can't tell if it's a courtroom or a classroom. All right, so I am not in favor of the legalization of marijuana. I am not in favor of the legalization of drugs. You want to talk about a health crisis? Let's continue to add to it. Let's get more people addicted to drugs. We can't allow that to happen in our